I'm sure everyone within the survival, prepper, or tactical communities has already heard about staying in condition yellow, sitting with your back to the wall, scanning the room when you first enter it, being next to exits, and being able to watch the bathrooms, taking different routes to and from work. All these things aren't new. What if I told you, if you are going around solo and are being targeted, you are not going to be able to stop an attack? No matter how bad you think you are, a properly executed ambush would be next to impossible to guard against. This is near and dear to me because I've lost family members to this situation. In one case, the original target was my own father after he made several comments disparaging a communist group. So why would it be useful for an everyday person to think about these things? The simple fact is that carjackings are on the rise. Many of these preventative tips apply to the housewife as much as they would an officer coming home from a shift, or any kind of high-risk VIP. Attackers may only want your stuff and leave you alone, but maybe they'll take you out as well. You never know, and you never want to be the one to find out. Let's take a look at the tactic of the ambush, and things you can do to mitigate damage. I know this is going to rustle some jimmies among the headstrong, but if you're going to be ambushed by a competent enemy, chances are you're only going to know once it happens, and only if you survive the initial strike. Vehicles compound a number of things you must be attentive to. Some of you might have seen the videos from south of the border. Vehicles blocking exits and boxing cars in, abductions at red lights, and of course the favorite tactic in many Brazilian videos, motorcycle passengers launching a broadside attack on the occupants of another vehicle. People do unsafe things all the time on the road, everywhere. It would be unrealistic to immediately launch into evasive maneuvers just because someone is driving like a maniac to get ahead by 2 whole car lengths. If someone wants to be a fool out on the road and your first reaction is to go into one of these maneuvers, you're going to stand out in all the wrong ways to everybody. There are things you can do, however, to give yourself that small sliver of a chance at successfully making it out of a vehicular ambush in case chance favors you. One of the most important things to think about when in a vehicle, just like when being in a building, is to always look for an exit. Of course, getting away in some circumstances is nearly impossible if the motorcycle method is used or you are completely boxed in. If someone is attempting to end your existence, then hopping into the wrong lane or driving on the shoulder is going to be the least of your worries. It's prudent for you to stay in the outside lanes to enable you to have an escape. If that means going the wrong way, so be it. Of course, the basics of having your windows rolled up and having your doors locked apply. If you can find an evasive driving school in your location, the experience you'd gain from these classes are gold. It's another useful tool to add to your toolbox that weighs nothing. Putting the vehicle in reverse and going as fast as possible isn't an easy skill to master for many reasons. A 3-day class won't turn you into Jason Bourne.
That's Jason Bourne.
But at these schools, you'll get a taste of what you can expect and how to do basic maneuvers. Your survival depends on recognizing approaching danger and, more importantly, knowing how to get out of the kill zone, especially west of the Mississippi where cities and towns were built around the horse. But not everyone can afford to use or maintain a car, and if you're in one of the major cities in the East Coast, especially NYC, maybe you don't own a car by choice and use public transportation. If you're out and about, on foot, your situation just became extremely complicated. Simply stated, if you're on foot, if your ambushers are competent individuals, you don't survive, period. You can be John Rambo, you still won't make it. An ambush is the most concentrated form of violence on a focused area, a kill zone. And if you are specifically targeted, all it takes is to find out your choke points. Any place that you routinely go is an example. Your favorite shops, places to eat, your walking route, your workplace. Any location that an ambusher has pinpointed as a place that you routinely go to. A good historical example would be Jesse James against Robert Ford and his brother. He was essentially cornered in his own house, and whether he knew why the men were there, it didn't change the outcome. There's also the ambush of opportunity. Chris Kyle is an example of this situation. He certainly didn't expect this man, as weird as he may have come off, to do what he did. Here's also a police officer in a foreign country. I won't show the whole video, but after they crossed paths, a few of them doubled back and took the officer's life as he was walking away. A well-executed ambush means nothing targeted leaves the kill zone. My father survived an attempt on his life in the old country. Enemies had heard he was in town attending a party, so they sent a couple of people to take care of him. Since this was an open town gathering, many of the people from the village and their family members from everywhere would be attending. That would also mean a lot of unfamiliar faces. It would be easy for someone to pose as a relative, a distant cousin, or a friend of a friend. Even then, just to be sure, they couldn't send anyone that was an actual family member of one of these people, so they relied on someone who was an outsider. To make things more complicated for the attackers, they didn't know what my dad looked like except for old family photos from the 70s. This person was flying blind. My guess would be he asked for my dad only by family name, which led to my uncle being targeted instead. My dad was saved, but my uncle became a casualty, and the message was sent. They would have eventually found out who my dad was. When he finally left, he was escorted out under armed guard and a convoy back into the city. After learning about these additional details of this incident while he was dying from cancer, I understood something he told me. I am only an American. He could never safely go back to where he grew up and see the old country, the province, and the family farm. What it comes down to is, an ambush is a well-planned and executed murder. If you survive the initial contact, someone made a mistake, and that may be your only chance to get away. There isn't much that I can add to prevention that, like I said, hasn't been discussed to death and rehashed by a new face every year. Look confident. Be a hard target. Stay aware. All the things you should be doing by default. If you're working in a high-risk environment, live in one, or have a job that makes you a target, you should do what you can to minimize risks. You should also realize you can only prepare so far. Having your affairs in order in case the worst happens so that your family doesn't have to deal with a further worsening nightmare situation is one of the final steps you should take. Now I get it, this is not a how-to video, this doesn't tell you how to get out of an ambush, so why even bring this up? Because I want this to be in the back of your mind. This is something that I want you to think about, especially if you work in a high-risk job or environment. You should be thinking about these what-if scenarios so that you can alter your routes, you can alter your habits, you can move a little bit differently, you can take these additional steps to make it increasingly more complicated for anyone to actually target you effectively. Also, like I stated earlier, carjackings are becoming increasingly common in these city areas. Consider your safety, discuss it with your loved ones. If they're not totally on board, let them know. You don't have to go through the storm on a daily basis, year after year. All it takes is one bad day. Life isn't a movie. There is no epic score track or slow motion when things begin to happen. You could be walking down the street, minding your own business, and